We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It's been, how many months has it been since we recorded the last episode?
Month or two, maybe? Two? We'll go with 2. Final answer, 2.
Sounds about right. 2 months.
2 months is definitely not right. 2 months is definitely not right.
Right before the Copa. Sometime in May, right?
I don't know. It's been a while. But anyway, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. Sorry, I got the headphones. I'm going to take these off because I don't like it. I'm going to take it off. It's throwing me off. All right. If technology fails us and I can't monitor the audio, technology fails us. It is what it is. So the way we're doing this now, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm live cutting. So if Georgie wants to say something.
Hi. Hello.
But it's Georgie. And if Joe wants to say something.
You put it to me.
Hi.
All right. So if I mess up the switches, that's my bad. But first things first, let's get some things out of the way. We're gonna go in the old school way of doing things, or how we used to do it before we took a 2-month break or whatever, which is a couple different segments. Pre-cap, nothing in the VAR room today, laws of the game, and fun facts. All right. In the pre-cap, we're going to talk about, Georgie, actually fill us in on what me and you are doing this weekend.
Oh, yeah. We're going to watch Liverpool against Real Betis because Joe didn't want to come with us, bailed on us. But
Time out. You guys bought tickets without me. Mm-hmm. And I already have plans that week.
So you did.
No. It's not like you guys made plans. Like, hey, you want to come with us?
Yeah, that's literally what happened.
Let me rephrase. It's not like you said, hey, we should all do this thing, as much as it was, hey, we're going to do this thing. Do you want to like tag along? I was like, well, I can't. Sorry. Taking my dad to the National.
How do you feel about that, Georgie?
Convention.
Those accusations that Joe's making right now.
Facts, not accusations, facts.
Nah, not facts. Oh, anyway, we're going to Pittsburgh to watch Liverpool against Real Betis. And that's honestly on Friday, the 26th.
Yep.
So that's in 3 days. That's going to be pretty exciting. Meet
So,
a lot of people.
We're not just going to watch the game, but we are going to get some content because we're going to start the Next Go Wins podcast back up for our loyal one listener, who is Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yep.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate it. So we're going to start the podcast back up, but we do want to get some content like outside the stadium and just around game day atmosphere because I think that'll be good. What kind of content are we going to get, Georgie?
We're going to meet a lot of random people. And we're just going to talk to people. Talk about, anything and everything.
My goal is to upset as many Liverpool supporters as possible.
Are you going to wear the Real Betis shirt you have?
I am.
That's a disgrace.
You have a Real Betis shirt?
Yeah.
Where'd you buy it for this?
My boy Pedro gave it to me, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was a gift. So, all right. So that's one. So if you guys are going to the Pittsburgh game, make sure you guys let us know so that we can meet up, get some content for the podcast. You could be up on the TikTok and all of our social media platforms, which means I'm going to take it over to Joe. Joe, I'm TikTok, Instagram. Come on, Joe. What are you doing, man?
What do you mean? What
You
am I
should be
doing?
pointing.
Oh, follow us.
YouTube.
It's been a while. 2 months off. I don't remember where to point.
Yeah, so we are.
Apple Podcasts.
We
Click
are
the
gonna
link
be-
above.
So we'll be uploading all of this stuff back on the social media networks. Just make sure you guys give us a follow. We'll try and be consistent because we haven't been as consistent as we usually are. All right. Let's see here. Where are we going to start? Pre-cap. Where have we been? All right. Why have we been missing, right? Copa and Euros recap. I feel like we don't have to go into too long of a talk about that because we kind of already missed the boat on that. It's already been done for a while. I want to talk a little bit about the state of England, the U.S., and Mexico because we're in, I wouldn't say shambles, but kind of shambles in our own ways. And then just a little bit about going into the Premier League season, maybe some transfer talk, what's been going on. So that's the pre-cap. And then as usual, like I said, we have laws of the game and fun facts, and we'll finish it there. How do you guys feel about that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. Where are we starting? Where have we been?
We're going to start with where we've been. So let's start with you, Joe. What have you been up to lately?
Been watching a lot of soccer. Took a lot of time off to watch the Euros, as well as the Copa America, which was pretty sweet. And did have the opportunity to take the family, my wife, my 2 kids, and one of my good buddies. We went down to Kansas City, went to Arrowhead, and we were cheering loudly and so much hoping for a United States victory against Uruguay. But That did not happen. And then we drove home that night right after 12 hours through the night. Sad. But that's really what we've been doing. Just watching a lot of soccer, hanging out with the kids, playing some soccer, training a little bit myself. But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I will say, having 2 tournaments on like that at the same time, you have literally from noon until 10:30 p.m., maybe with like 30 minutes in between, maybe an hour in between each game of soccer was a pretty sweet way to spend the summer. Pretty sweet way.
Georgie.
What about you, Georgie?
What about you?
You know, just enjoying life. Obviously with me and Javi, we have liquid football, so a lot of our time was spent on that. I was hurt for most of the season, so just been watching, helping out, warming the players up because I can't do anything else. But yeah, watching Euros, Copa, like you said, it's having 2 tournaments at the same time with that quality with so many good players. You can't beat that, especially in the summer when we're like usually we're just like, come on, we want the Premier League to start back up or like the big leagues to start back up. But now when you have Euros and Copa watching all day, it was like, thank God, because I have no idea what I would have done if they weren't around. So yeah, just watching a lot of soccer, just being around soccer, getting back into the game, and excited for the Premier League now.
Fantastic. I have been doing a lot of recovering lately because, boom, I can't show that on camera, can I? Oh, there we go. Side view. I tore my Achilles playing. What was I doing, Georgie? Playing over 30s. I wasn't even playing. Well, technically, it wasn't over 30s. I was playing for my over 30s team, but I was playing against a U19 team. The speed of play was a little bit too fast for me. I didn't like it. So anyway, I was playing, took a heavy touch, which I never do, and then ended up stepping back and tore my Achilles. So surgery about 6 weeks ago, which means another 2 weeks in the boot. I'm off the crutches now, which is fantastic. 2 more weeks in the boot before I get into a regular shoe, but that means 4 more months before I can start jogging again. Isn't that crazy?
It is.
4 more months.
It is terribly crazy. And yeah, that sucks.
But I'm okay. Sorry, I'm still trying to adjust some audio levels around here. But I'm okay. I'm feeling all right. My playing career is done anyway, so I'm not really too worried about it. It's not like I'm trying to come back to anything. I just wanted to walk again, get off the freaking crutches because that was so annoying. But I will say this: the timing has been absolutely perfect because 3 days after my season was over coaching, I tore it. Season doesn't start until August, which means I had a couple months to recover without having to go to work every single day. And Copa America and the Euros started literally like 2 days after I had surgery. So chilling on the couch, watching games. That's it. But anyway.
Look at this guy, glass half full type of guy.
You know. And I do want to give a shout out. I'm wearing the Eagle Owls shirt here. My boy got me. North Grand. My boy Frody coaches here at this high school. And I think they won something. What does it say? Northwest Conference champions, 4th place semifinalist, 2A Illinois regional champion, and sectional semifinalist in 2022, I think. Shout out to you guys got any shout outs? Georgie, anything?
Shout out to my boy Bobby Firmino for sending me this jersey, especially for me. You know, me and Bobby go way back, so we're just very close friends. We DM on Instagram, so no big deal. Yeah.
Joe?
I'll shout out to my dad. Taking my dad to the National Sports Card Convention this weekend. So if anyone's going to be at that, let me know. I'm more than happy to link up. But that's about it. Shout out to my dad.
Cool. All right. So let's get into it then. We've talked about where we've been. We're going on the Pittsburgh trip. Copa and Euros recap. What do you guys got? Georgie, let's start with, which one should we start with? Copa America? No, yeah. that one's a little bit more in detail, I think. Euros. Let's start with the Euros. Where are you at? Your thoughts?
Honestly, a lot of the big teams disappointed, I would say, in terms of like game of play, but the smaller teams came out strong and were entertaining. It just depends, right? Like if you're somebody that's just coming into the game, you were looking for games to be a little bit more open, where a lot of those games are a bit more tactical. When for like people like us, like we might enjoy it. and that's fine. But for the regular person that's looking for entertainment, they're probably like, what? What is? I thought these teams are supposed to be like France, for example. They didn't score a goal from open play until what?
Spain.
Until Spain. Before that was all own goals. Big expectations, obviously, because they have one of the best teams in the world, if not the best team on paper. So, I mean, for me, I really enjoyed it. And I think a lot of the smaller teams like Slovenia, Serbia, like all those teams will come out and they didn't care who they were playing. Turkey came out really strong and, gave every single team they played a really good game, and such a young team as well. But the whole atmosphere, the whole Euros, everything from the start to the end was entertaining for me. I actually really enjoyed it. And I think this is one of the first tournaments that I enjoyed from start to finish. And it's been a long time since I enjoyed like a tournament of like international tournament. Usually in the past few tournaments have been like, you get few games that are good and then like few letdowns. But this time around, I feel like, I don't know, maybe because there was like nothing else to do all summer. I don't know. It just felt different. I really enjoyed this Euros.
Nice. Joe, what do you think?
I'd agree with Georgie on a lot of that. I mean, I think there's a few teams that I was really excited to watch, and they consistently disappointed me. I think of England as one of those teams. But I also was pretty surprised, and I don't know if surprised is the right word, but glad to see these teams have recovered from how they've performed at other major tournaments like Spain, Germany, and watching both of them and where I think they will go in the next few is exciting because I think they're back up where they should be, obviously with Spain winning. But Germany, I think, was also a strong team from the jump. And I was very, very happy to see countries like Austria do really well. I think you mentioned Serbia and Slovenia, same thing there. But all in all, I think the tournament really had it all. It had some great saves. It had some great goals. It had young players doing amazing things. Lamine Yamal, Jude Bellingham, both scoring incredible goals. I guess the biggest letdown for me was Mbappe breaking his nose so early because it kind of took him out of the tournament. But outside of that, I thought the reffing was also really good throughout most of the tournament. And there weren't any crazy, huge, in my opinion, controversies there. But start to finish, I liked all of it. And I thought England was going to find a way to pull it off in the final. I don't know why. I just did. But yeah, I feel bad for Harry Kane because I don't think he's ever going to win anything.
I don't feel bad.
He can come play for Liquid Football. He might win something with us. Maybe not. Georgie, I did want to, well, both of you guys, I did want to ask, but Joe, you answered the question kind of already, do you really think that England actually had a chance going into Spain?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, even if you look at the game, if you take out, I think Spain played really, really well, and England did what they do in most games, which is come back. And if you take Danny Olmo, if he's not standing on the line and heading that ball off in stoppage time, you're going to extra time and it's right there. Like, to me, it was very, very close for them. And I thought they were going to win the game going into it. I really did. I just thought Spain would somehow drop it. And then with Rodri going out in the first half, I thought the stars were all aligning for England to make it happen. But Orizabal was a toe onside, and then Danny almost standing on the line to head that one off in extra time, and those small things, a few inches, change lives, really. Because now those Spanish players are Euro champions.
England pissed me off. Actually, no, it's not England. It's Southgate. Southgate, his tactics piss me off because he makes great players.
Yep.
Or I'm not going to say great, because to get great, you got to obviously win a lot and whatever. But really, really good players, he makes them look like it's literally Liquid Football playing. Mm-hmm. No offense to anybody that's here.
Just offending the coach here.
Yeah. So it's so weird the way he sets up his teams, because if you look at every single game that they played, they start off the same exact way. Mm-hmm. When the game is tied or they're winning, let's just be honest, they park the bus. They have Harry Kane playing defensive mid. They have Foden coming back, getting the ball from defensive mids. When you have Rice and 5 other midfielders in the middle, Saka's the only player that stays out wide that gives them any width whatsoever and length, because there's absolutely nobody out there on the field that can actually do what they like Harry Kane drops off, Foden drops off. It just the whole balance is off. And on top of that, they're all lack confidence when they get on the ball. Because once you do get on the ball, there's no outlet. 2, one mistake and all the fans like start turning against you. All the English media turns against you. Absolutely everything, like from top to bottom. I was gonna say Southgate's trash, but he like.
Listen, man, I just asked you if they had a chance. All right, I didn't ask for a tactical analysis.
I know,
of
no, but it pisses me off because England have such a good team when you look at from like, and I don't know we can say in the past 20 years they always have a good team, but these guys right now, these players, one, they're young. 2, they have the ability because they do it for their club teams. And they're so technically well gifted, and tactically when they play for their club teams, they do the right job and the right things. But once they come to this England team, it's like Southgate says, no, we're not doing this your way. We're doing this my way. And then it's so anyway, when they're tied or winning, England look terrible. When they're losing, they come out of the shell and the individual brilliance. I don't think it's Southgate. I think it's just the individual players are like, we have to go for it. So at this point, there's no tactics. We're just going to do our thing, whatever. And yes, people are going to say, but the changes he made. No, that's not anything to do with the changes. The players that come in, individual brilliance gets them back into the game. And then the specific game that we just talked about against Spain, when they went down a goal for about 5 to 10 minutes after that goal, Spain were still attacking. Then England was like, you know what? We have to go for it because we have no other choice. And they were on top for the remaining, 10 to 15 minutes. And that's the only time we saw them on top. Is every single time they went down, that's the only time we saw England on top. So,
well, let me say this because I think England is on paper should be the best team in the tournament when you look at how much talent, how much depth they have on the bench, where not every team has that much depth. The only reason I asked that question is because Spain was the only team at the Euros that I felt like played consistently well. Every other team was iffy. Like France couldn't score goals. There was a couple actually smaller teams that I thought had some really good games. Denmark, I thought when Denmark played England, I thought they played a masterclass. Switzerland in their first match, I thought looked really good. I thought they could go pretty far. England never convinced me, but again, individual brilliance. You know, they always have the players that are going to be able to make the difference. Spain was the only team that looked better than every single team that they played throughout the entire Euros. And so obviously England has a chance going into the final, but I really thought that unless Spain had like a mistake or something like that, Spain was always going to win it. And they did in the end. It was close. It was probably closer than I'm making it seem. But Spain was a better team. And again, even the commentators and like the pundits were saying it's one of those where you can't even feel that bad because you know that you lost to the better team. Like if England just had a bad game and they were the better team, you'd be really upset about it. But Spain is the best team at the tournament. So, but like Joe was saying, not as much controversy as the Copa America. So let's quickly transition into that. Georgie's boy. Georgie's already smiling because he knows what I'm going to get to. Where should we start? First of all, obviously Argentina wins. All right. Probably deserve to win. Dead. Maybe not deserve to win, but in the final was the only game where I thought maybe Colombia had some really good moments and they could win it. But leading up to it, I think Argentina was everyone's favorite, or everyone thought Argentina was going to win it. You disagree with me, Georgie?
What I mean, okay, it depends what you mean. Are you talking about in terms of like once they got to the final, you're saying which one's the favorite? Or are you talking throughout
like just in the tournament overall? When people were picking who they thought had the highest chance of winning.
Oh, so before the tournament.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Argentina is obviously going to be the favorite, like going into the tournament. But I actually thought Argentina played some pretty poor games during the tournament. I thought some of the games were very, very important. They got very, very lucky to get out and get to the final. On top of that, they were on the side that was like, I don't want to say easy, but compared to the opposite side, the other bracket, I think if they were on the opposite side,
they had the easier route to the final.
Yeah. I mean, they played Ecuador or in Canada.
Yeah, Ecuador and Canada.
Compared to potentially Uruguay, Colombia, Brazil.
Yeah.
Not that Brazil was any better than how they usually are, but
I think that tournament, almost everyone had bad games. Like Uruguay against United States was just a freaking everybody just kicking each other.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next game after that?
Uruguay's most games, to be honest.
I was gonna say that just seemed like Uruguay, but
Or Copa America overall.
But Brazil had terrible games. Brazil didn't look good at all.
yep.
Colombia actually.
I think Colombia was
Now
the
that I
best
think
team in
about
the
it, Colombia
tournament
actually
in
did look
terms of
really
like
good.
start
Yeah,
to
for
finish.
sure.
They reminded me of how Spain looked in the Euros in terms of like overall tactically set up, having a good cohesive unit with a clear game plan offensively and defensively what they wanted to do. They scored a lot of goals. They defended well. Their star players showed up and played well. They got results even when they would go down in man. Like to me, I thought Colombia could win, but Argentina is just so hard to score against, and they're so hard to beat, and they have enough talent. Like they're probably going to score 1 or 2 goals, and that means you're going to have to score 3 against them, which is not easy to do. And best case scenario, you are hoping for penalties, and you're probably going to lose if you go there because they have Emmy.
Yeah.
So it's just like in tournament play, they're such a tough matchup, I think, for those reasons. Like you would have to go beat them in regulation, but the chances of you keeping a clean sheet or keeping them at 1 goal is almost slim to none, you know? Even Ecuador, like, I think Ecuador had the best chance. Obviously, they took them to penalties, scored that last-minute equalizer, and then got demolished in the shootout. So,
But that wasn't the talk of the tournament, though. The talk of the tournament was the fights, whatever you want to call it, the organization, and all of the shit show that was the tickets at the final. So Georgie has been going on Twitter for like the last 3, well, how long has it been? 2 weeks, a week now?
No, a month now.
Since the final?
Oh,
No, I'm talking about since the final and since the fight with Uruguay.
Yeah, like 2 weeks probably.
Okay,
or
so
10 days, 2 weeks.
you stirring the pot on Twitter?
Georgie's been going off because I guess I'll let you go off here on the podcast as well, Georgie. But the best part for me was Marcelo Bielsa's press conference. Unbelievable. If you guys haven't watched it yet, go ahead and watch it. Find a way to get it translated. If you speak Spanish, it's fantastic because he just goes off on everyone. Talks about corruption, talks about the agenda of like the press and how they're only there to benefit the people who are paying them. Talks about the U.S. organization, the fields, how crap they were, the politics behind everything. Give us your thoughts on the fight, Georgie, because we were watching it in different places, but you could see in the screen when they showed the stands with the fight, you could see a guy with a ponytail wearing a sports bra, right, which is the vest that they use for the GPS trackers, punching people, and I was like, everybody was like, is that Darwin Nunez having to go at the fans? Your thoughts on that whole situation, Georgie? I just want to hear. I'm not even going to ask you a question, just your thoughts.
First and foremost, how the fuck are you going to have their families come down right behind the bench and offer no security? The easiest thing to do as a fan, if you're drunk, opposite team, whatever, if you're one of those people that wants to start shit, the easiest thing to get famous, the easiest thing to start shit up is to go after the wife, the family, the fathers, whatever, the kids. That's the number one thing. If you want to get a reaction out of a player or somebody on the field, you go after the family and you start throwing drinks, you start whatever happened in the whole situation. Of course, there's going to be something. There's no way. If I saw my family, potentially somebody throws something, a bottle or anything of the sort, or my teammates or whatever, of course you're going to get up there and fight or protect them, or whatever you want to call it. Like, there's just, I don't understand how, and I get it. In American sports, like NFL, 2 people from opposite teams can sit next to each other for the most part. There's obviously fights everywhere, but for the most part, they can sit next to each other. Lions fans and, I don't know, our Chiefs fan, whatever, they can sit next to each other, drink a beer and be like, oh, that was a good play, blah, blah, blah. It's cool. But once you get it, not even Europe, once you get Copa America, South American teams, they're absolutely passionate and intense. Not saying it's right that you're like starting fights or going after families. But if you know those people that are so passionate about the game and their national teams are coming into your country and in your tournament and you offer no security in the stands, and while I was watching that, you see Darwin, you see a bunch of the players going in there. You see 3 cops for the like 10, 15 minutes, 3 cops. What are those 3 people going to do? Absolutely not. There's nothing they can do. There's absolutely nothing that they can do. So watching that, I was like, first of all, when we first saw it, I was on the phone and I'm watching and I was like, is that Darwin in the fucking stands? What the hell is going on? So then they zoomed out, and I think we talked about it. I don't think anybody on the TV knew it was even Darwin. Like they just showed like
No, because I was waiting for the pundits to say something about it, and they like didn't notice until afterwards, and they started talking about it.
So like once they came back and they were showing different angles, different videos came out, whatever. There was one guy on Twitter that he's a journalist who sat behind the Uruguay bench, and there's another guy like the one on Twitter that was just sitting there as a fan. So they were both like sending videos and updating of what's going on behind the bench and how it all started. So once they showed the videos and everything, that's when I started to get pissed off because everybody's like, "Oh, it's not, nothing happened. They're being victims, whatever." So in my head, I'm thinking like, do you understand the fact that if you saw potentially one of your family members or your kid or your wife or whatever potentially get harmed, you would just stand there like, yeah, don't do that, and just don't do anything about it, or just wait for the police, where we watched 20 minutes of videos and 3 cops showed up. It's an absolute joke. Watching that just shows me that we're not going to even get to the part who I'm blaming, because that alone went places. But everybody has a part to blame in this, and it's not just one side of fans. It's not just the other. It's not just the organization. It's not just the U.S. Everybody gets a part to blame in this, because there's no way that should be allowed to happen. Why are these families not in the box? Why are they right behind the bench with, I don't know. The whole thing is...
All right, so I'll ask Joe. Joe, who is to blame for this? And I'm not talking about the final. I'm talking about the Uruguay game.
The Uruguay fight?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's on the federation and or like the security at the arena, in terms of like making a naive decision to not have more things marked off. Like when we went to the USA Uruguay game, and I was worried because we bought tickets behind a goal, and I was like, I don't know we bought them off StubHub. I don't know if this is a supporter section. I don't want to be in the middle of the Uruguay section with my kids. And when I got there weren't any clear-cut sections for anything. And to me, it's something as a country we have to understand about the sport, is like you need to separate these fans. And when people are buying tickets to these events, or if they're coming in the Uruguay side, but they're a USA fan, like you move them to a different gate for the safety of the people, because it should be a place where kids can come, adults can come, and everyone can come and have a good time. And good time is different for different people. So to me, it's like the security, and I don't know necessarily if that's the federation, if that's the stadium security, if that's the local police force security, but it needs to be something that's really, really thought through for the World Cup, of having clear-cut areas for specific fans and having security in between them. Because to your point, like alcohol is going to be served and people are going to get to some type of place emotionally. It's just going to happen. You have to be prepared for when it does, so things like that don't happen. And thank goodness, at least from everything I've read, no children were severely injured or anything crazy, because it could have turned really, really bad really, really quickly. Because I mean, I saw even Darwin carrying his, I think, son or daughter, the baby's tiny, and a drunk person doing the wrong thing, swinging and trying to hit him and hitting a kid, like it could have turned really, really bad. But
so who is more to blame? Is it the
security?
Right, but the security,
like the head of security for the tournament, I would say, or the events. I don't know if that's the stadium. And
that's what I'm saying. I don't know. Is that CONMEBOL or is that the United States and just the stadium? Because they both, to be honest, in the statements, they both basically blamed each other. Well, the U.S., I don't know, whoever the organization or whatever the federation, didn't say anything really, but CONMEBOL basically kind of hinted at saying like, we trust that when we do these stadiums that they have the right security, so the security didn't act the right way or whatever.
Yeah, they said it's not in the contract. Like they have no responsibility. They said this is for the final. They said for the final specifically, once everything happened, they released a statement right a day after saying Miami or whatever security, local police, whatever, knew about the event, and it is not in our contract to provide the security. We can only encourage, and we let them know what the situation is in terms of it's a very passionate game, blah, 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 all this. So they're just set of hands off, and this is not
That seems like a cop-out answer, because to me it's, yeah, okay, Conan, well, you say that in your contract, it's on Miami or wherever the stadium is to get the security right. it's still your event. You should look at their security plan and review it, and at least give the feedback of like, wait, your security plan has no stewards in the stadium sectioning off one section to another. Because go look at an EPL game. Go look at a Champions League game. The away fan section always has like stewards all the way lined up one aisle and then all the way lined up another aisle. So they're kind of sandwiched in between a ton of security guards to make sure they stay there, or police, or both. Like that to me is I think that the stadium should have to get the security right. And I think whatever federation is putting on the event should know how the events normally go and double check the security and say like, yeah, this is what we've used in other ones and that works. Or no, hey, that's not enough people. You need to get more. That's how it should be to me, if you ask me.
So the Marcelo Bielsa press conference, the first question they asked him obviously was, should there be sanctions for the players? And the moment they asked him that question, he was like, the fact that you guys are asking this question already shows me that you guys are only wanting to write articles about that are going to please your employers, because the employers want views, and that's going to be, and that like you're already starting to press the agenda that our team is at fault
the players
for what happened.
Uruguay's at fault.
So the way he phrased it was really good, because he basically said, he's like, if you are blaming our players and saying that there might be sanctions or there should be sanctions, you're admitting that they failed to have the right amount of security there, and they failed to have an exit for the families to get out safely during the whole fighting and everything. He's like, so because our players had to go into the stands and fight, you are admitting that you failed in the two things that should have happened before it even got to that point. In which case, that should be the question that you guys should be asking at this press conference, instead of, are we going to get sanctions? You guys should be asking, why did it fail? Because he said the same thing that Georgie was saying. It's like, if you see people fighting your family, or your family getting beat up or whatever, you're not even going to think about it. You're going to go. All of the reporters in that room, he asked them the same question. Of course you're going to go. Which is kind of funny, because he pissed off the reporters by saying that there's a percentage of them that are essentially corrupt and not really true journalists, because they're only pushing the agenda. And then he went off on everything else or whatever. But that's enough of that. Let's talk a little bit more about what happened in the final, because you think after that situation, the first thing you do, whether you're security, whether you're CONMEBOL or whatever, you absolutely ensure that something similar does not happen at the final. And it wasn't the same thing, but it was a different aspect of security problems, where people started just coming to the stadium without tickets, overloaded all of the entries, started knocking the rails over, people climbing over the gates, fences, people going into the air duct systems to try and get into the... So what was the issue there, Georgie?
It's the same issue that happened. It's like the same, just in a different area. Like, how are you not going to have enough people covering? And this one makes me mad. And this is where the tweet went kind of viral, for better or worse, I don't know. With what I posted about blaming CONMEBOL, blaming US or US Soccer, whatever, the local police, the stadium, security, and everything. Because let's say I'm CONMEBOL and I'm cheaping out, and everybody knows they want to do it their way because they want to make money, and they're going to cut corners, they're going to do all this. That's completely fair. They get a lot of the blame. But if you're US Soccer or US, or the event is in your city, and you just saw how awful it was against Colombia and Uruguay, how potentially somebody could have died in your stadium, let's say. Somebody could have got really, really hurt. And you watch that, and you see the backlash they get, not only on social media, but now like the sanctions with Bielsa, he had the press conference. So you have the two really, really big events they're looked at around the whole world. Regardless if US is in any sort of like responsibility, the aspect of it and how it looks to the rest of the world, it looks awful. So now if I'm US or the local, like the city where the event is going to take place, I'm going to make sure I'm overly prepared compared to understaffed, not have enough people. And I know the argument is, well, we wouldn't have this problem if people were just normal and they wouldn't run in. Well, guess what? The whole point of having security and to be head of security and to hire security is to think of the worst possible scenarios that could happen in a game or at a stadium or anywhere around the world. That's the whole entire point. To think of the worst case scenario. You don't think about, oh, well, these people are good. They're not going to try and do this. Well, that's your job. That's literally your whole entire job, is to figure out what people could do and you to prevent it. So there's no way you can say, well, it's this person or that federation or this or this. It's everybody's fault. There's no way any of those people, organizations, let this thing go after two big things just happened, like not even a week ago. And to your point of, like, in a way, it was worse what happened in the final. And I know we're talking about fighting in the stands compared to people just rushing, but some of those videos there's no security. So, like, what could have happened in that stadium? People could have brought guns for all we know. Mm-hmm. We have no idea what people might have brought guns in. We still don't know. Nobody knows. They just let 7,000 people without tickets, without any type of security check at all, enter the stadium. We saw people with Bacardi bottles on top of their heads and them holding them like in their hands. What if those people started fighting and just started throwing them at people's heads? Like, things, in a way, everybody got lucky that nobody was severely hurt in any of those accidents. Because if something would have happened, there have been so many lawsuits. There have been so many problems for the United States alone. Because then FIFA's gonna be like, you know what? I don't know. With the World Cup's 2 years away, but this is not looking good. So, I mean, I don't know. Everybody's to blame, and it's a shame that it happened because it ruins the beautiful game.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem that they had was underestimating the passion that supporters have in other parts of the world. Like, yes, it's being hosted here, but the two teams that were in the final are two South American teams where if you host the exact same match in Argentina or in Colombia or in Uruguay, you know that security has to be much better than where it's at here.
Yeah.
So I think if it was, for example, let's say if it was Mexico, United States, the final, they probably don't run into these problems, to be honest, because it's that game happens all the time and it's not that big of a deal. And we've played finals against each other in the United States. Not that it's not that big of a deal, but it's a completely different level when you have two South American teams coming in. So fans are extremely passionate. They're willing to do anything to go and watch the game, especially because some of them probably knew that the security wasn't going to be the same as it was in their home country. The fact that at one point they said that they just were just letting people in without tickets and just saying, screw it, we're not even going to try and stop this because we don't have enough people. And like you said, the number that was estimated was like around 7,000 people without tickets, to where people were with tickets, couldn't get in. They had to go back home. And listen, if I bought tickets, let's say for my family, and I brought my two kids and I paid a lot of money and I see what's going on, I'm leaving. I'm not going to that game because I'm not going to put my kids through that. There's pictures of like young kids, like 7, 8 years old that we saw like in the middle of that whole, like the almost getting trampled and stuff. So, and then again, the people who finally did get in, trying to go to their seats, and there's people in their seats, and they're saying like, we can't really do anything about it right now because there's way too many people like this to do anything about it. So I wonder, that story hasn't hit the news yet, but I wonder if a lot of those people got their money back, which I'm assuming you could freaking take it to court and be like, this is absolutely unacceptable.
The thing that's wild to me about all of this, like I agree with everything both of you guys were saying. And you mentioned like it's people's jobs to plan for like the worst case scenario. Guys, this literally just happened. Like the thing that's crazy to me is the exact same thing happened at the last Euros in England, and it was delayed because of the exact same thing. So it's like there's a documentary on Netflix about it, where it's all the security people talking about all the things they did wrong and things they could do differently. There's literally a blueprint out there online for anyone to go see on what not to do, and they still got it wrong. That's what blows my mind. I remember I was out in California. We watched the Euro game. We were doing some things. Hey, let's turn on the Copa game. It's not on yet. Why? It's delayed. What? Then they started talking about, I'm like, this is insane. It's insane. The same thing is happening. Like I don't know. It's wild to me. And to your point about like if the same game was played in Brazil or Argentina, there would be the National Guard or riot police starting a mile out, and you have to checkpoint there, then checkpoint again, then checkpoint again, checkpoint again. Like there's no hanging out by a stadium because they know what can happen. So they weed it out, and the U.S. has to get it figured out before the World Cup because it's going to be the biggest World Cup ever in terms of most teams. It's going to be absolutely huge, and I'm worried similar things can happen, sadly. But
yeah, and that was the thing that everyone was talking about was, are we ready to host a World Cup if we can't? Clearly, we're not there yet right now. The biggest thing for me in these situations is like somebody just take the freaking blame. Like it's so annoying. You got nobody wants to take the blame. People blaming each other and people blaming things that like are clearly in your control. All of these situations are in somebody's control. It's not like the weather, and yet nobody wants to say like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do in the next game to fix it. This is the mistakes. Nothing. But fortunately, it seems like nobody died. A lot of people probably arrested. I saw some people bloodied up in that whole trying to get in, but could have been much worse for sure.
By the way, I want to say, because I know there's not a lot of comments because who knows how many people watch this, but there's people, because when I did post this, people went at me be like, you're so stupid, you have no idea CONMEBOL runs the whole thing. The World Cup is a completely different organization. We absolutely understand that. We get that. But everybody gets a blame in this. If it's in your city, in your country, in your whatever, you have to understand that if that just happened a week ago, Bielsa calls everybody out. If CONMEBOL is not willing to do it, somebody has to take the initiative and be like, listen, we're not going to have anybody get hurt in this final. We got to make sure that it's right and done the right way. And to your point about the different checkpoints, friends of mine went to Brazil for the World Cup. They said they went to 4 different checkpoints to get to near a stadium.
I went to the World Cup in Brazil. That's when I learned, like, wait, you're walking through riot shields a mile out.
Yep.
And they have massive cars, and there's probably thousands of police officers at every game we went to at the Maracanã. And it was no issues once you got to the stadium because you couldn't get to the stadium if you didn't have a ticket.
And last thing I want to say about the game, there's a video of a guy carrying the dog in his bag. There's no way that guy bought a ticket. So
we were watching that. We were watching me and Georgie went to DraftKings to go watch the final, and and we obviously got there like on time, 35-40 minutes before kickoff was supposed to happen. So we were there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game actually started. And when this whole thing was going on, we were like, every time they panned to a fan, we would talk about whether they had a ticket or not. Because there was some funny characters in the stands that you're like, there's no way that guy has a ticket.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is crazy, and they need to sort it all out. Which brings me to the next part about this, which is I want to talk a little bit about the state of England, US, and Mexico. So England, first of all, my opinion, Southgate made the right decision leaving. I think they probably wanted to keep him. I don't think they were thrilled about keeping him, but you can't really fire him. You can't really sack him when he made it to the final. Regardless, I think people's argument is like, oh, he's taken us farther than any other manager has taken us. I don't care. You're supposed to win the tournament. That should be the standard for the English national team because of the players and because of the quality that you have, the way you're looked at on the world stage. And I think it was also less about that and more, like Georgie mentioned, your style of play cannot be boring, cannot be defensive when you have those players. It's pretty clear to most people that a manager with some real tactics, not just good vibes, manager with real tactics should have the team playing a lot better than they were playing. So I think that's the right decision for him to step down. And I don't know, I don't think that they told him he had to step down, but I feel like that was actually a good way to do it. Instead of sacking him and making him look bad, he left on his own before getting sacked. However, where does this leave England in terms of the next manager? You got two years to the World Cup, and also the expectations going into the World Cup now.
You gonna go first?
I think, well, first on Southgate, it's a difficult one because as much as I say that, his tactics, the way he's handles the players and the way his teams are set up, he does get them to these places. And I know the style is not however we would like to see or what it should be like for England. But he does get them to these finals and in these big tournaments. So it's tough to, I guess it just depends what you want. Like if you want somebody that's going to do whatever it takes in terms of playing defensive and get you to a final and maybe win, maybe lose, but it doesn't give you that thrill, maybe Southgate is the right coach. But if you're, for me personally, if you have the England team on paper that we look at and you play defensive, that shouldn't be the way. Like you play defensive against Serbia, like come on, like that shouldn't be happening. So in terms of that way and the style they're playing, imagine somebody like a Pep. I know there's only one Pep, but imagine somebody with an attacking, flair of football with all these players and tactically a little bit more aware. These players would thrive. So I think it's gonna be a difficult one because I don't think there's that many managers in the world, one, that are world class at the moment that will take the England job because there's so much pressure in the media and all that comes with it. And two, there's not that many world class managers in international football to begin with. Like, for example, Deschamps at France he's won, but he's very similar to Southgate in terms of the way like he plays. Even though he's won, and so it's very, very difficult. Like if Southgate would have won, like against Spain, we'll probably be still talking like, how the hell did that happen? Won,
Right, but that's the thing. You can't say like if he would have won because he didn't. That's the whole reason why we are talking about this. Because the champ, they might not play the greatest, and sometimes it's a little bit ugly. And even this tournament, they couldn't score to save their life. But they also won the World Cup, and they also won the Euros.
Yep.
So regardless of what your playing style is, it could be as boring as you'd like. You won 2 very difficult competitions to win. So you're going to stay. Your job is going to stay. Criticism is going to be at an all-time low because you're winning. Ultimately, that's the most important. It's more so for me, it's like if you don't win, you at least have to play some sort of exciting style for people to get behind you and say, okay, we got the right style. It just didn't come together for us. But when you don't win, you can't have the Trent experiment, for example. And I know Georgie defends Trent with his life. Trent is probably not all to blame there. But you can't have those types of experiments. You can't be putting players out of position and playing all different styles and it not work out. And then you can't say certain things like we don't have a natural replacement for Calvin Phillips.
Yeah.
Like I saw a meme. It's like one of those where it's like, what about me? It's like he's like talking to a girl and she's like, oh, I'd love to have a boyfriend that's something like you, just like you, right? And he's like, well, what about me? She's like, oh no, not you,
not you.
That's literally Calvin Phillips. He's like, I find a replacement. He's right. He's there if you wanted to bring him. Clearly, you didn't want to bring him. So you can't say things like that. Have experiments like the Trent experiment, and then not win. If you win, it's totally fine. But he didn't win.
I mean, it just looks broken. Like the whole thing looks broken.
I was gonna say the way they play it just looks disjointed. Like they know how to defend well, but they don't have any plan when they have the ball. And like, hey, we're going to get the ball here, and these are our attacking moments, and it's very much just on the players. And the thing I guess that drives me crazy about the whole thing is I'm fine with having super defensive tactics because I genuinely think that's how you win tournaments. I think Deschamps' a prime example of that. Portugal, when they won the Euros, I don't think like they drew all their games in the group stage and then won the Euros.
Yeah, it was very similar to France this time around.
You do win tournaments by drawing a lot of games and just getting to the final and seeing how it goes. I think that's how Italy had a lot of draws in their lead up to when they won the Euros. I think some of it at some point, it's not just on Southgate. Like at some point you do have to put some of the onus on the players because in big games, if you want to be a big player, you have to step up and be a big player. I think of Mbappe as a prime example of that, scored in multiple World Cup finals and steps up when they need him to. That the thing that's disappointing to me for England is that they didn't have that in their big players. Saka didn't perform great in the final. I think he played phenomenal, though. I think it was in the semifinal.
He did.
That was like his best game. I'm like, oh, this is great. He's finally coming into form, and I think that they can win this. Foden was Didn't play well, I don't think, for most of the tournament, at least from what he can be. And the thing I guess that bugs me the most about Southgate is he won't change it up if things aren't working great, and if you look at Nagelsmann for Germany, he would change things up. Wirtz started a few games to start the tournament, and then as they got into later stages, wasn't starting. That Southgate will only change things, like he changed things with the Gahey injury. I always thought they should have been playing with the 3-back. Play with 3-back and find a way to get Cole Palmer on the field, because that to me is what they were really lacking, was like a true number 10 in the middle of the park who would facilitate, get the ball, and be creative. And every time he came on, he did well. But he was smart, I think, for stepping away and stepping down. But I don't know if there's going to be someone who's going to be better. And if I'm an English fan now, I'm hoping that we get somebody who is as good to at least get us to those moments. Because if in every major tournament you're getting to a semifinal or final, at some point you're going to get lucky either with a call, with a bounce, with something, and it will go your way. And England, I think, got a little bit unlucky, and they came up against a team that no one was really expecting to be as good as they were in Spain going into that tournament. But it kind of also props to De La Fuente in terms of having a clear-cut way to play. The players knew what their roles were, and it didn't matter who came in off the bench for any position. I mean, they started Jesus Navas at right back against Mbappe, and it worked out like that. But it's because of the whole unit and what he had done the work to prepare, and that's where I think Southgate missed, is he didn't have that clear-cut definition of what everyone was going to do throughout everything, and it was kind of like a hodgepodge of figuring it out on the go. Sometimes subbing in Tony, sometimes then subbing in Watkins, and it happened to work out, but most times, and it looks like a stroke of genius, but I think there was also some luck to that too. But I don't know who they're going to get now, and that's where, if I'm an England fan, I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I think you mentioned De La Fuente. He is one of the reasons, or he's a prime example of why England needs a change, basically, because he actually won the Euros with he won it with like two other age groups as well,
and with a lot of those kids.
Yeah, and with a lot of those kids. But when you have a team that plays so well, like Spain, together, you almost forget that they don't have a bunch of big names. Like their captain is Morata, who you would think is 5 years past his prime at least. Mm-hmm. And somehow he's the captain of that team, and that team is playing really, really well, and you give him so much credit. But I think that's why when we talk about who the next manager for England is going to be, everyone's focus is we need a manager who's actually tactically well aware of how to make changes in games and how to put teams together and have them playing a certain style. Yeah. It's not just about, let's just get somebody who's got experience, who's older, who's managed at a high level. It's like we need somebody who's a tactical genius to take us to the next level, which is why they said, and I don't know how true this is, but I saw it on a few different places, that they're going to be willing to wait until Pep's contract runs out, and then he'll be. So this is like another year, right? They're going to wait like a little bit less. I think it's after the season, right? Something like that. So they'll wait until his contract.
Relegate, yeah.
Well, they said and they'll wait until his contract runs out, and then they'll.
You think Pep would even want to do that, though? I guess when you look at the roster of that team, you're like, let's go.
Absolutely.
I think Pep would like the U.S. job more.
No chance.
But before we get to the U.S., let me ask you this, because this is literally what we tell Thomas all the time. Be careful what you wish. Well, you don't support England. But like, what does Thomas say all the time?
Moyes out.
We want Moyes out, right?
Be careful what you wish for. You got it.
Because he only gets us so far. Top, 6, let's say 7 out of top 8. And we always tell him, you don't know if the next manager is going to get you the top 6 or top 8. You might be in the relegation battle. It's the same thing with England now. We're talking about Southgate. We want him out because he got us to a final. And I know there's a big difference because you're talking about West Ham, who don't have the needs and the pool compared to 10 other teams possibly in the Premier League. Where England, they're stacked. So that's the main difference, obviously. But you don't know if before Southgate, quarterfinals was the highest for number of tournaments. Mm-hmm. If that, I don't know. So it's a tough one. But
No, but see, that's the difference. West Ham getting to 7th or 8th place is a successful season. Like they start getting close to Europa, and that's like England winning a championship, because that's a higher ceiling than what's expected for West Ham.
is it though?
Yes, absolutely.
That's exactly what I was going to say. But England making it to back-to-back Euro finals, one of which they lost in penalties, and making it to a World Cup semifinal.
Yeah, but
Like at some point you have to be like, I mean, guys,
that's the difference though, is that
it's not like they win a bunch of World Cups before. It's not like they have a pedigree of winning. We're not talking about Brazil or Italy or Germany here. We're talking about England, who's won one
60 years ago
at home. And now, like, to me, it's like, especially because the World Cup was only 2 years away, and a lot of those players are going to be going into their prime. I don't know. Part of me was like, why don't they just let it ride out and see what happens? And then no matter how it plays out in the U.S. World Cup, he's done. And then they still would have had time with most of those players.
Here's what I think. At the club level, it's different, because club level only, the title race really only happens between Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, right? And if you qualify 4th, 5th, the incentive is you go play your European football. You go play Europa League, you play Champions League, right? At these tournaments, these international tournaments, if you don't win, you're just a loser like everybody else, right? There's no incentive or benefit of finishing 2nd or 3rd, unless you're a team like Switzerland, Turkey, Denmark, where for them that would be a very big accomplishment. Croatia, when Croatia made it to the final, right? So, but what I'm saying is England should win.
Should they though?
Well,
by all means.
Like just because of the players they have on their team?
Yeah, because it's like
paper,
Manchester City. It's like Manchester City. If Manchester City doesn't win, do you think they're okay with just finishing 2nd?
No.
Because other teams have also have good players. When you look on paper, right? When you look on paper, England should have, and I know that this is the problem. This is why we're misled. So I'm kind of like battling myself here, because the Premier League is the most watched league in the world. So naturally, because it's the most watched league in the world, you automatically assume that all the best players are playing there. When in reality, all these other leagues have some very good players that could easily play in the Premier League, right? And Champions League is a perfect example. English teams don't always win. Rarely do they actually win the Champions League. Mm-hmm. In fact, Spanish teams have played against English teams in like
and they win almost every final.
They've lost Spanish teams have won every single final against English teams in the last like 14 finals or something crazy like that. So it's misleading. Yes, it's misleading. But again, it goes back to the fact that if you had somebody who was tactically better, you think that they would be not guaranteed, but you'd be pretty damn sure that they would win. Because right now they have some really good players in some really good moments in their prime with a lot of depth, more depth than the other teams. So if you had a better manager, you would win. And this goes back to why I think Pep would take it versus him taking the United States job, is because we talk about Pep only wants to go to teams that have the most money, right? Or Pep has only gone to teams that have the most money to spend so that he can
get the best
buy all the best players. It's the same thing in international football, but you're not dealing with money. You're dealing with just the players the player pool that you have because they were born in that country or they're citizens of that country. England has the biggest pool of players over all these other countries. So when you look at it, that's almost like money to Pep. He's like, I can have the best players here, or I could have some okay players here. Pep's never going to win the World Cup with the United States, or most likely not.
So you admit, finally, after all this time, that Pep is a fraud?
No. I'm not. But I'm saying, because I don't think he's a fraud. I'm just saying I would think he would be a lot more willing to take England than he would the United States, because he knows he has a higher chance of winning things with England than he does the United States. That's the only reason why.
I agree with that. There's one thing though, like getting to a final is one thing. Winning a final, like to me, tactics matter, but there's also a mentality to it. Like there's a reason why Real Madrid continues to win the Champions League, in my opinion. Yes, they have great players, but they also have the experience and they know how to win in those big moments. and they can create something out of nothing. They can do whatever it takes to get across the finish line. Argentina, we've watched it now into the past 2 tournaments where like they almost blew it against the Netherlands in the World Cup. They almost blew it against Ecuador, but they find a way, even almost to get it across the line. Like when you look at a lot of the English players, most of them don't win trophies though with their club teams. Jude, Foden, Kyle Walker, John Stones. And then the rest of them, if you think about it, like there's not a ton of championship consistency there either that I think does play into this. And as much as we like, they have great players, but again, I don't know. To me, a lot of it has to go on the players too, because they're not showing up in those moments when they really, really need to. I'm trying to like rethink through the final. Obviously, it was a few weeks ago, but who on England had a great game in the final?
But see, I disagree on that. I mean, obviously, some of it goes on the players. Don't get me wrong. But, and I'll go all the way back to the beginning of the tournament, of the Trent experiment. When you put Trent there, and then you said this has been the experiment, we've been doing it in practice, whatever, hyping it up, or we're going to try it out. Then you put Trent in there. He doesn't do terrible. He lost the ball, one time I remember in the Serbia game, and then they took a shot. And then he had like a few long balls, not really existent, just not terrible, but not influencing the game.
Yeah, it didn't help.
But nobody on the field did much better. Then you put Conor Gallagher on there. One of those games, he did nothing. No matter who he put in those situations, no player stood out. And I think it's tactically because, again, Harry Kane drops. If he had Trent on the field and you have runners, Anthony Gordon one side, because Phil Foden in the first few games, Phil Foden played left wing, but when you had the ball, he was coming deep to get as a defensive mid. So was Harry Kane. Then you have Saka. There's no way Saka would do anything by himself against 2 or 3 players. So even if you do give him the ball, he's by himself when Harry Kane is making a run, making those, like Phil Foden is still far behind. But if you have runners, like say Saka on one side, Gordon on the other side, and you have like walk-ins, people who are willing to spread the field and make it big, then you have players like Jude or Phil Foden or Rice in the middle. Let's say those were the 3, and you have Jude and Rice next to each other, and you have Foden in his natural position as a 10 instead of wide. That opens up the field, creates more space, and now you can actually play a style of football that fits those players. But when you have Southgate making them play such a defensive style and dropping a Foden as a left winger as a defensive mid at times, and Harry Kane does the same, there's no outlets and there's nowhere you can go with that. So should the players play better? Of course. But I can't tell you one player in the whole tournament for England that I would say should be in the top like 20 or 30 players in the tournament.
There wasn't anyone that I don't think that played well the whole way.
And I think
through.
but that's like,
I agree with you on that.
It's like tactically, no matter what you do with all these great players, Jude Bellingham runner for Ballon d'Or. Like, I would not think, if you show me this Jude, I'll be like, there's no way this guy's going to make Ballon d'Or.
Yeah.
Yes,
if you take out his bicycle, like he scored some sweet goal, like 2 great goals, but
it's like, so I think a lot of it falls on Southgate and his tactics, because I think you bring another man. Like, for example, as much as I said about Deschamps, like for France, you can see the style, like they might be more defensive, but you can still see France attack and counter and be good on the ball and take shots, whatever. This tournament, they didn't score that many. But they still, if we look at the stats, I guarantee they had like 20 shots a game.
They're also missing their best player in Mbappe for the whole tournament. So it's somewhat unfair to them because they can defend well, and their outlet is get the ball to Mbappe and let's see what happens. I agree with you in the tactics that I don't think Southgate set them up well. But at some point, if you're a player and you're in a final and you've been to like Saka, Kane, Rice, these guys have been to multiple Euro finals. Like at some point, I feel like you have to look at each other and say, like when Cole Palmer scored that goal, like, hey, let's just go for it. He can't, like, what is he gonna do? He's on the sidelines. It's not like he can call a timeout and change how we do things. Like, guys, let's keep playing, let's keep pushing, let's keep going. And that's where, like, I don't know. To me, yes, I agree with you that Southgate didn't set them up well, but again, they're in these moments. I think with the group they have and with Southgate, they could and should win. And if they would have kept him, I think they could have and would have at some point. They would have gotten over the hump. Like, because a lot of finals to me are also coin tosses and who's going to win, and there's a little bit of luck involved.
Yeah, there's definitely
and
luck.
they just never.
Yeah, but
get it.
There's a couple things. One, there's a certain amount of confidence that goes in when you know exactly what you're supposed to do and you feel confident that the tactics are correct. When the players don't feel like the tactics are right, that's when there's a huge breakdown. Like Spain goes in knowing that they're going to be the better team because they feel like we know what our position is, what our positions are individually. We know what our style of play is, and it's been successful. So we believe in the tactics. We trust the process. Same thing with Real Madrid in the Champions League. They could go down a goal or two, but they trust the process and they're like, we know what we're going to do. We know what we have to do. We know that how this tournament works out. And they have a really good manager. Manchester City, same way every time they play a Premier League game. They trust the process. I don't feel like the English players fully trusted the process. One, because they were under a lot of negative criticism from the press throughout the whole tournament. And because it wasn't working throughout the tournament. Like they weren't, they were getting results and stuff, but they didn't feel confident. So then you go up against a team like Spain and you're like, crap, we just don't feel good about this game right now. So you bring in a coach like Pep, for example, or somebody similar.
Do you think do you think the players weren't bought into Southgate and his tactics?
Absolutely.
I
think they weren't fully bought in because these guys are playing for really good managers in their home clubs where they're showing their best football. And then you come here and like Georgie said, not a single one of them really had a good tournament that you're like, man, that guy's playing really, really well for this whole tournament. They'd had inconsistent performances. And when that happens, yeah, you probably don't trust the manager as much as you'd like. And I think they defended him because he's a nice guy, but that's also one of the problems is that he's just a nice guy. Like you think about Pep, you don't want to piss Pep off, right? Like the players talk all the time about their experiences where I made one wrong run and we still scored a goal and Pep took me off. Pep's like Thierry Henry says it. And they know like, shit, if I don't do my job, I'm going to get taken off. So I have to do it a certain way. And that ultimately leads them to trust the process and they win because of it. I think players weren't fully bought into the system. I think Southgate exhibits a very similar problem to Mexico and to United States, which is that their manager lacks a certain amount of respect from the players because lack of experience. So what I mean is, again, you play a certain way for Pep, you play a certain way for Ancelotti. You don't do the same thing for Gareth Southgate, Berhalter, Jimmy Lozano. Like you even mentioned it. You said that, yeah, at one point they could just say, screw it, the guys on the sidelines, let's just do what we need to do. And I felt like there was times where they kind of did that.
When they went down a goal.
Yeah.
That's literally what, there's no...
That I guess was what wilds me. If you're going to do it sometimes, like just keep going. Because after when they subbed on Cole Palmer against Spain and they were down, they were countering great. They were getting chances. And I'm like, this game is about to end insanely exciting. Then they scored really quickly. They stopped countering. They stopped getting chances. Spain scored. They started countering again, started getting chances, and then there just wasn't enough time.
But just imagine if you had that confidence going into the match instead of doing it almost just to be like, these tactics are different than what we've been told, but they're working, right? So that's why I feel like there really needs to be a change. So that brings me, I guess, to the next country, which for me, it's a little bit more similarly as Mexico. We're having a really rough time. The last 5 years, we haven't been good at all. Maybe a little bit longer than that. They brought in Jimmy Lozano, who very little experience. Mexican legend, kind of, yes. Played a lot of games for the Mexican national team. Big timer in Mexico and stuff. But a lot of people back him. I backed him at first, but then I realized it was the same problem with Gareth Southgate. I don't see a style of play when I watch Mexico play. I just see them, a bunch of guys kind of trying, kind of not really trying, nobody looking really good, nobody standing out. And I see a coach on the sidelines that really has no character and doesn't demand a certain amount from his players. And when it goes downhill, there's no solution. There's no, how can we fix it? It's just kind of like, hey, sub another guy on and hopefully that guy does a little bit better. So I think the Mexican national team running through a lot of similar issues that England is just not at the same level, obviously, because we don't have the same players. But then The United States. The whole reappoint Berhalter, has a nightmare, and then they end up sacking him. What was the biggest, in your guys' perspective, what was the biggest fail or the biggest problems that ultimately led to the United States not getting out of the group stage?
I'll attack this one because I feel really passionately about it, I guess. The game against Panama, obviously, you have the Weah red card, and that's not what you want to have happen. But almost immediately after the Weah red card, you score a goal. To me, if I'm Greg Berhalter, at that point, I have to make immediate adjustments and do something, either substituting and removing Balogun or removing Gio and going defensive, because wait, okay, we're up now. We're down a man. We need to make moves and we need to make adjustments and we need to make them now. And look at this game as just get a point. He didn't do that. And then the subs he did make in the second half when it was already tied to try and preserve the draw, I did not think were good. Bringing on Carter Vickers, switching to a 3-back system, and you could tell that the marking was off, and that's why they scored the second goal. So to me, it was his tactics after things went haywire in that game. And I think it kind of goes to your point of just lack of experience. Like managerially, he just hasn't coached. Like if you really think about it, he doesn't coach many games. International coaches don't coach many games. And that to me was the biggest piece of it. And then it compounded against Uruguay, where you didn't make changes early to go after and try and win that game and try to win it and get a goal early, maybe then get 2 or 3, because it could have turned into the U.S. needing multiple goals if the Panama-Bolivia game went differently and we couldn't even score in a game that we had to win. And that to me is insane. If you're at home and you can't score in a game you have to win, when the other team had nothing to play for who had already won the group, like you either don't know what to do or can't get your players to do what you want them to do. And either way, you can't be the coach. So that's where I think, I guess, the Panama game started to fall apart, and then he couldn't rebound at all after the red card.
Georgie?
I mean, similar to like England, I guess, like what I'm not gonna claim that I watched the US like so in depth, because at this point, once Greg got hurt again, I was just like, we're gonna see the same thing that happened in the previous years of like, I just don't see a style. There's no, like if I watch United States, I don't know, it's like give the ball to Pulisic and then hopefully he does something with it, creates a goal for somebody up top, and then that's it. There's really no, I don't know, there's just no tactics to it. It's just, and I think the players might be saying, oh, we figured things out, we like him, we back him. But to like what you said about the respect part, or in terms of they're not fearful enough to where they have to step up their game. They're just content of, oh, he's not going to do anything too much. We're just going to be here. So there's not really much that we have to like improve or like try harder. Where if you bring in a coach who has more experience, that has the specific character that's needed to put not fear into your players, but enough fear of where they need to be.
That healthy anxiety of like, I'm going to lose my spot if I don't perform and do what's asked of me.
So until US gets to that point of hiring somebody like that, then I don't.
I think it's hard because I think it's just a shift in the American culture that's also caused a lot of issues, because there's very few managers that can instill that amount of respect and kind of, you do need a little bit of fear into your players, where they're willing to play at a certain level with a certain amount of grit, that you just don't find that as much anymore. There's very few managers that you can count that you could say like, I would be scared to play for that guy and I would have to play a certain way. Berhalter's, how are you going to bust your ass to play for a guy that's telling you that the other game is 1-1 or whatever, so you don't even need to score? Like, at this moment, we're going through, so don't even worry about scoring. Like, we're okay. When he's like giving him the signs in the middle of the game.
And that's when they get scored on.
And it's like, and that's when they get scored on. Yeah. And it's just like,
focus on what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest.
I literally tell my 8-year-old girls, like, I don't care what the ref says. I don't care what your parents say. I care about what you do, and that's the only thing that matters. And that's all you should care about when you're on the field. Like, yeah, know what your opponent's doing, but focus on what you do. And he's over here, national team coach. Guys, and good.
That part really bothered me, because if I'm a player, and if I'm like a captain, like Christian Pulisic, right? Was he the captain?
Yeah.
He's captain, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying like a leadership persona, right? And the coach tells me that. I'm like, dude, you don't even have a winning mentality. Like, and he's like, oh yeah, tactically. No, it's bullshit. There's a difference between like using that as a tactical thing and using that as in like, hey, we're just not good enough. So like at least just hold on long enough so that we can progress. And you're not gonna be willing to play for somebody to a certain level like that. And you're gonna be okay with it because at the end of the day, this is where I think the United States has a little bit more blame to place on the players than England. Because the United States, I saw one person who was really running, really like going hard, getting stuck into tackles, and that was Pulisic. Mm-hmm. Everyone else, like there was a couple subs that he made that just go out there and they just like jog around like as if they're only playing like the last 20 minutes and it's just like a league game. I'm like, dude, if I got subbed in knowing my team needed a goal, I'd be busting my ass. I'd be getting stuck into tackles. Maybe not me, but that's why I didn't play professional. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is that like
Javi and tackles.
There's certain managers that can demand that out of you. There's certain managers that can demand that out of you. And going back to the beginning of what I was saying is like shifting culture. A lot of these players just can't be bothered because it's not the same as it used to be.
Well, also too, like unlike England, there's such a big drop off between your starters at most positions for the U.S. and the second tier player, where it's like, I'm not going to get taken out for that guy, so I don't really have to work that hard. Like if you're Balogun, who is your clear cut replacement?
What was the guy that came in and like it was terrible?
Ricardo Pepi?
No, the other one.
Johnny?
No. There was one more forward. There was one more forward that was really bad that I'm like, why is this guy playing? I can't remember, but he came in and missed the one. People know. But I can't. No, Pepe.
Josh Sargent?
No. It wasn't. It was.
Those are the strikers we brought on.
There's one more. There's one more guy that's
Aronson?
Like, no. African American. I swear there's one more guy.
Oh, Haji Wright.
Yes, him. Haji Wright comes in. Do you even know who Haji Wright is, Georgie?
Yeah, he plays Coventry.
Coventry. Well, I will say, I was actually like, I feel like we should be subbing him on more often instead of Pepe.
He does well for Coventry.
He does. He scored 2 great goals for Coventry.
A nightmare for I look at Haji Wright and I'm like, this is the solution.
Yep.
This is the problem. This is the solution. Like Argentina, you sub in Lautaro Martinez, who I personally hate, but the guy's doing really well at a big club.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference between the, like people say, oh, this is the best talent we've ever had. Like, don't get me wrong. It is the best talent we've ever had. However, our second best player, Gio Reyna, doesn't start for Nottingham Forest, a team that was in the relegation battle in the Premier League. And he was on loan to them because Dortmund didn't want him playing there.
He's done at Dortmund now.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you have to stop playing to the egos of it and move on. And I think back to De La Fuente in Spain, like they're about being a great team, not about having a bunch of great players. Yep. And the United States, I think the media almost makes it worse because we talk about, man, these players are so good, these players are so good, these players are so good. They in their heads think that. So much so, it's not on this hat. I was noticing it the other day on one of the hats that I have. I was driving to work and I put it up on the dashboard. And you know what the USA crest has on a lot of them?
The stars.
Our stars from our Gold Cup wins. And I was literally looking at that, and to your point of like winning mentality, like if I was head of US soccer, like no, we're not putting a star on top of anything that we sell. Unless our goal is to win the Gold Cup. If that's our goal and that's what we're going after, then fine. But if I don't think that's our goal.
No. Yeah.
But
like, yeah, again, I think players wise, do you really think Weston McKennie cares too much?
Him, no. What happened to Musa?
These guys are dancing. These guys are
that was the other thing. So Dest isn't playing, can't play, right? He's hurt. Why are we putting in another right back? Put Musa as a right back and play with inverted fullbacks and have him get him on the field. To me, he's one of our best players, Musa.
Oh, that's what I thought. I mean, I haven't watched too much, but I thought Musa was supposedly like one of the best.
To me, he is. Like
I like him.
I like him
a lot.
Played a ton. Plays every single game and every single minute in La Liga. I think 2 seasons ago, he's the top minute person in the entire league.
Yeah. And
he can't get into the U.S. national team because we started, I don't even remember who we started at right back. Joe Scally. It's not his position, but play inverted fullbacks, play with the 3-back and move him into the midfield. Do something. Find a way to get him on the field.
There's a problem right now in the culture that's spreading throughout the world, I think, of you have to be careful with what you say now.
Yep.
And that started, I don't know if it started in the US, but it seems like it started mostly in the US, and then it started spreading to where now managers like Greg Berhalter doesn't want to rock the boat because he doesn't want a whole huge PR nightmare like what happened. Where if you think about that, like think about that PR nightmare that happened with him,
Reyna
and his parents or whatever. If that happens in South America, you think anyone cares? No, because the coach says, fuck off. You're not playing for the national team again. And everybody just makes fun of Reyna, and that's it. They move on. It's not that big of a deal because they're like, dude, just man up about that kind of stuff. Whereas now, that's like super, like you have to be really careful because you're going to get canceled and all that stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily spread to England, but because England's looked at as a country with have a little bit more class and that kind of thing, I think Southgate's in a similar position where he's like, I just want to make sure everyone's happy. And so my approach is not going to be a tactical one like Pep, where he's like, if you're not in this position, I'm going to sub you out. His approach is going to be like, hey, I'm going to pat you on the back after every game and say, hey, keep your head up. You know? And then that creates complacency. It's the truth. It creates complacency. And that's where you end up with results that you shouldn't be getting, or that you could be a little bit better is what I'm saying. Whereas South America, think about Marcelo Bielsa, Argentina, like Colombia. Those guys play games and they kick the shit out of each other. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, hey, we don't have any class. It's like, no, you're going to kick the shit out of him because if you don't, we're going to lose the game. And if we lose the game, you're not playing on the fucking national team anymore. You're not playing. You're not getting any minutes and stuff. Where, again, South America, I feel like that hasn't transferred over there just yet. They call, what's Marcelo Bielsa's nickname? Like, I don't know, it's like the crazy one or something. Not the crazy one, but it's something similar like that, where it's like the madman, I think is what they call him.
Something like that, I think, yeah.
Sounds right.
Again, you play a certain way for a manager like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your culture tells you.
I mean, look how Uruguay played.
Yeah. Your culture tells you growing up, you got to listen to him because if you don't, you're not going to play. And the parents aren't going to, hey, can I have a chat with Marcelo Bielsa because you said this to my son? No, they're telling their kid like, hey, sort your shit out because you got to play like that for this guy or whatever. So all of that just to say, I think it is a little bit of a culture problem. And it's upsetting because if you took the same 20 years ago, we went back 20 years, there would be a lot more managers in the world that you'd be scared of and that you would respect naturally. Whereas now, a lot of those managers are getting, if they're not tactically good, they're starting to get pushed out. Sam Allardyce, Sean Dyche is going to start getting pushed out. Like those are the kinds of guys that back in the day they coached a certain way because it was totally okay, and now they're starting to get pushed out. The only people that are staying, Marcelo Bielsa, because he's a tactical genius, or tactically much better.
He's up there.
Pep Guardiola, because he's tactically much better. Diego Simeone, tactically very good. But all the other ones, when they're not tactically very good, they're like, "Hey, we don't accept that in our world today."
To your point, too,
like shit.
So the culture changing, the sad part about it for the United States is the Federation had the chance to say to Berhalter, like with this whole thing, hey, since you curtail to what parents say and all that stuff, like we're getting rid of you. You know, and just be done with it and say, hey, we're done with it. And then whoever they appoint up, hey, you're not bringing Gio for the next year just because of this whole thing. We don't want him around the team. We want him removed. Like the Federation could have, at that point, changed the culture and made a statement, but they brought him back. Then they tried to smooth it over. And now here we are. So it's, I don't know.
One.
Yeah, but
nothing changed. And we just wasted a bunch of time and wasted a home tournament.
And again, and that's the bigger problem really, is the fact that it's the federations that want someone who doesn't want to rock the boat because they don't want to look bad, right? Because if it wasn't, they would have let Berhalter go and got somebody who maybe is a little bit more controversial, but is going to get results. They're like, we don't want to rock the boat, so we'll keep it in house with someone that we can control and someone that we can tell what they can and can't do. Which is why it leads to the problem going into the next search for the manager is you have a lot of good options. I think that you're already hearing the names that are coming up that are going to be the most likely to get it. Cherundolo, Patrick Vieira, Thierry Henry, all of which are people that the federation feels like they can probably control because they've already been in the MLS system, so they know kind of how that stuff works. So, and yes, maybe the US probably won't be able to get a Guardiola or a Klopp. Like Klopp didn't even. I said it from the beginning. Everybody's like, "Oh, Klopp's coming." I was like, Klopp won't even entertain negotiations. He'll say, "Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry, guys, I'm not interested."
Can you imagine you and Klopp on like doing the press conference and he says some controversial stuff that he already says at Liverpool nonstop? He would get canceled, right? Well, no, he wouldn't get canceled, but like the federation won't appreciate it. Yeah. But back to what I was saying about Pep. Think about this. So everywhere he goes, there's money. So it's completely the opposite reason of why I think that Pep would enjoy it. Because if he was, it won't happen, I don't think, because the federation will never give Pep
complete control.
But they might, because it's Pep. They might, because the style that he brings. So I don't know. But imagine Pep comes to the United States, changes the whole outlook, youth system, in charge of absolutely everything for the next, 10 years, whatever. What Klinsmann was supposedly brought in to do. You give those keys to Pep. He changes the whole outlook of U.S. soccer in 5 to 10 years. He's gonna be the greatest manager of all time. You changed the
he already
one country. No, this gives you a like right now we're talking.
It's like the trump card at the end of it. Like, hey, no one can beat what I've done because good luck doing what I did in club. You'll never do what I did from a national perspective, and now I'm done.
In club, people can argue because of the money. You go to a national team of the U.S. where they're, I don't want to say underperform, but where the whole system lacks, and you change that into something that works, zero doubt. And you get to live in the United States.
Yeah, but I'm going to say the two issues that are wrong with your argument. One, he would have done that already at the club level. He would have said, if I really need to prove myself, I'll take Arsenal, for example, which is still like a realistic target of a club that you could take to another level with the resources that you have. He would have taken a club like Arsenal and turned him into a dynasty, right? And then people would have been like, oh yeah, he turned Arsenal into that. Or even a little bit lower. Pep, wherever he goes, he just wants to win. The second problem is the development. He is not interested, in my opinion, I don't know him, but he is not interested in development. He's not interested in like, I'm going to take a young system, I'm going to completely change it, and then in 5-10 years, we're going to see the benefits of that. That is something more like what Bielsa would do. Bielsa would love to come to the US and say, let's look at it from a grassroots level. Like he'll be running training sessions with like U8, U9 players in the United States. Bielsa would.
Sit down his cooler, screaming at him.
Yeah, Pep, you can give him the keys, but I don't think he cares. I think he wants to go somewhere where he's going to win. You're already regarded as probably the best manager in history. And you can make the argument for one or two other people, but realistically, Pep is the one that has changed the game and won doing that. Like Johan Cruyff changed the game, didn't have the same dynasty across all the teams that he's coached like Pep, right? Influenced Pep a lot, which is why he gets a lot of credit. But I mean, I'm not even going to get into this, but have you seen the Dutch national team play in back in his day and stuff, like those tactics? And anyway, all I'm going to say is like, why would you want to take that risk when you're already there and you haven't shown that you want to take that risk anyway? Because he's had the opportunity. Pep can coach anywhere he wants. There's not a single club that would turn him down. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's not a single club that would turn him down and he really wanted to prove that he's the best manager of all time, he would have done that at the club level, or he would have done that at the national team level. The fact that he stayed at Manchester City this long, how many years is he at Manchester City now? 5, 6 more?
No, it's more than that.
Almost like 10.
Yeah,
Okay, the fact that he stayed there this long because he knows he has unlimited financial resources to always win shows that he doesn't really, because he could have done that at another club. He could have said, fuck it, I'm going to stay at another club for 10 years and I'm going to prove that by the time I get there and to the time I leave, I've really changed everything. He would have done it already.
Well, I think he stayed at City because they hadn't won a Champions League. And then he stayed again because I think he thought that they could go for get 4 in a row in terms of the Premier League or do another treble, which they didn't do the treble, but they did the 4. I could see him now wanting to do something different. But all of the things that you mentioned are the reasons why I believed, and I still believe and hold out hope, that Klopp will take the job.
George is
so-
like, no chance.
Klopp originally he wanted to take 12 months away. My biggest thing is if I'm the U.S. Federation, if that's what he's hung up, no big deal. We'll find an assistant. We'll find a caretaker for you who you know, because he has like his old second in charge. I forget his name, who's still coaching. Call him and say, hey, why don't you come and be the caretaker? No, Klopp's.
Yeah, Pep Linders.
Yeah, he's
at Salzburg now.
But hey, you want to come over and be the caretaker manager until Klopp is ready? You know him. You know what he's going to want to install. You know all these things that he's going to want to do. Come, run it until he's ready. And worst case scenario, if he's not ready, he's probably going to be doing fine. He was better than Cherundolo and some of the other people that we'd get. Like that to me is, I don't know. If we go with another American, I won't be happy with it. I wouldn't mind Patrick Vieira just because he's won a World Cup, so at least he knows what it's like to win a tournament. Like, you need people, in my opinion, who've gone through the process of being in camp and have been with the club and been with the team for a month and like know what it's like to win and what that feels like and how the vibes of that are and how the tactics are. That's what you need. You need people to come and do that, which...
So Alexi Lalas.
No.
You don't want Alexi Lalas? He tweeted today he's willing to take the job
For free.
For free.
If we are making our decision based on how much we will or won't pay people, I'll take the fucking job for free too. Like,
put your name in the hat.
I keep going on LinkedIn. There's no post yet for the position.
I'm gonna kill your dreams, Joe, because Klopp's not coming to the United States.
I know,
but I mean, even if that was a possibility, he would have said like, all right, let me just ask you this question: is it okay if I take another 6 months off? Like. And then we can have discussions. He basically said, like, thank you, but I am not interested in even having conversations with you guys about the possibility of... It's not like, hey, Klopp is in talks right now. It's like Klopp has... what's the nice way of saying it? Politely declined your invitation or whatever. So...
Within like 12 hours.
They could have had...
I'm surprised that he wasn't at least more entertaining of the idea, because to me, Klopp is somebody who looks for a few specific things. He looks for the opportunity to build something. He looks for the thing he's going to build to have a long-standing thing. And then he wants to build it around a specific type of culture and a specific type of thing. That America's really the only developed country that's left in the world who doesn't embrace this sport. That to me, it screams to him, come here, build what you can. Look at what you did at Dortmund. Look at what you've done at Liverpool, and put both of those clubs in a position where the fans have fallen in love with the club again. And Dortmund, so much so, like, they're still doing well long after he's gone. And that to me is why I felt like he would at least be interested, because he also strikes me as the guy, like the normal one, like things that pull on his heartstrings, he can kind of be swayed into and like leans into and cares about. That's why, like, the whole story of it all. And people always talk, who's better, Klopp or Pep, Klopp or Pep, Klopp or Pep. You come to America and you build something here and you make it to a semifinal, a final, or God forbid you win something. What have you done, Pep? Klopp's won multiple things in club, at international. That he could do something that Pep hasn't done to separate himself in that conversation.
I think the one reason why he politely declined, right, or whatever, or they're not going to get a real manager, is because ultimately the people who are hiring you are idiots. Who are hiring, they're idiots. Let's be honest. Like the whole system is messed up. Georgie talked about this too on his Twitter rants, right? The whole system is messed up.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in the people who are in charge of that, essentially your employers, you don't want to work there.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to work, regardless of how much money you're getting paid. Nobody wants to work in an environment where it's a shit environment and you're not happy going to your job every single day.
And your boss doesn't even know like what your job is, type thing.
Yeah. So I think for Klopp, it's one of those things that, or Pep or anyone, I'm working for people who are idiots, who are not going to let me do what I really want to do because they're too scared. And until something changes, I'm not going to want to do it. Hence why Jesse Marsh said what he said in that press conference, where he said, unless a lot of things change at the management level or at with the higher ups, I don't think I'd ever be interested in that job. You got to remember, these are the same people that could have had Marcelo Bielsa and could have had Jesse Marsch as their manager. And they chose Greg Berhalter over those two. And now you're telling me that they want to go and hire Klopp or Pep? You see where the issue lies, because we could have been in a much different position right now.
I don't know how we picked Bielsa.
Exactly. Had we picked Bielsa or Jesse Marsch, we could have been in a much different position. Well, maybe
I'm fine with not picking Jesse Marsch. Bielsa's the one that doesn't make sense.
But when you compare him to who the alternative was, which was Berhalter.
Yeah. Oh, you mean Jesse Marsch compared to Berhalter?
Yeah, it's not. There's no debate. Jesse Marsch, Marcelo Bielsa, Greg Berhalter. You would pick a fourth option over Berhalter, and then they still did that. So it just shows the minds of the people at the top and why people like Jesse or people like Marcelo Bielsa probably wouldn't be interested anymore in taking over.
The whole story about Klopp, it fits to a T until you tell him it's the United States. Because once you take this job, it becomes political. Jurgen Klopp, Bielsa, Jesse Marsch, strong opinion, like they have opinions. Their opinion is like they're going to go into a conference, they're going to get asked a question, they're going to say it, and then the PR shitstorm doesn't come because it's the United States is what is the reason why they pick certain type of a character that's not willing to make a big deal out of like random things going on in the country or in the world. They're going to stay quiet and worry about on the field. You bring Klopp in, the amount of times Klopp has talked against like England, like in terms of like how they deal with like their political stuff, in terms of how during COVID, like he wasn't happy with like how some of the rules were. Imagine a U.S. coach coming out and talking about that. The people in charge would absolutely hate it. So that's the reason why I don't think any of the building, the making a beautiful story, making the United States one of the best, all of that fits Jurgen Klopp perfectly. Until you bring out the fact that it's United States hiring somebody in charge. Bielsa, can you imagine Bielsa being in charge of the United States and having that interview? The guy would be gone within an hour. You're fired. And then that's going to cause more of a shitstorm. Then it becomes a whole thing. That's why it's so political. All these hirings are just, it's politics involved. And it's not just based on, can you change the system or like how good of a coach are you or how good of a manager or what you can do. It's more about who's going to stay in their lane, worry about the stuff on the field. It doesn't have to be the best, doesn't have to be the worst. As long as we're competing, we're happy. And we're going to still make our money.
Yep.
It's honestly something I guess I hadn't put enough thought into from the politics standpoint and how much of it does play into it, sadly. Because like I look at it from, would he want to do it like with what's on the field? And I think he would. Would he want to do it for like what it does to the fans? I think he would. But from I guess both of you make great points in terms of who's hiring him. Like if you have people who make a bad decision once, twice, 3 times, like why are we expecting him to make a better one now? And I could see Klopp being like, yeah, I don't want to deal with it because of the headache that comes with the politics. But
the man's tired, man. He's out with the rappers and going to concerts left and right.
I think that's a crazy thing when you think about it all, is that the U.S. really is, and I've said a lot of bad things, but the U.S. really is a perfect place for someone, not perfect, almost perfect place for someone to come in and have really good resources for the future with the right mindset, with the right implementation. Mm-hmm. But when you get to that last little step, it's the fact that you don't get full control because of all the politics that are involved here more than most other countries. And if you're not going to be given the full keys to say, we fully support you in changing everything, we've been doing things wrong for a long time, but you're here to change it and make it better. It's nobody with a real experience, or nobody who's a real legit candidate is going to get the job or is going to want to take the job.
Is that why you're not thinking about it? A real legit candidate?
Well, I would take the job. I wouldn't take it for free. I'd take the job. I'm not going to say it's not hard, because it's extremely hard. The amount of pressure is extremely hard. But when you really think about it, it's quite simple because you're limited. It's not like, oh, we have to look at the entire world. We have to look at every single player in the world and try and send scouts everywhere, and we have to find the best players. No, you have a certain pool of players. Your job is to pick the right players and put them on a field in a good system. And the truth is, you don't even have as much time as you'd like. Everyone's at the same disadvantage. You get them for big tournaments, you get them for a month before the tournament. A month to implement a playing style, very difficult.
So you almost have to find players that play in the style you want to play in and pick them. But we pick the players that have always been there, and don't do that. Where it's like you have to find some people who just fit your system, and they might not be as good as others, but in this system they work better.
You have to. You get like Spain got lucky, and not lucky, but essentially got lucky in 2010 when they essentially just took Barcelona and put them in Spain kits. And that was easy because think about that. That probably would have been one of the easiest coaching jobs of all time.
Yeah. And you add in Ramos and a few Real Madrid Spanish players and call it a day.
Yeah.
Casillas.
It's difficult for everyone else for most of so, but it's not. What I'm saying is that it's in a sense it's a part-time job because you're not full-time coaching. Your job is really just to pick the best players and put them in a system that makes them stand out individually as best as possible. It's not like a whole yearly plan of like what's the. It is a development plan, but not the same as club.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think part of that though for Spain is like the reason why so many of their players fit in their style is because of how the federation sets things up from a grassroots standpoint, where it's very clear cut in terms of like what we're looking for from a skill set. That in America, like you'll find some coaches that really want athletic players, and you'll find others that really want technical, and some who really just want thinkers. And but really you kind of need a mixture of all of that. In Spain just leans mostly in the technical piece and then figures out like we'll find one or two athletes and throw them out there, but
and that's something that's already been put in place successfully by other coaches. De La Fuente is not the one who invented not created the system of how Spanish players are taught to go through the ranks, right? So that's why I feel like again a little bit easier. Whereas the United States, again, one of the biggest problems is that whole system at the youth levels is completely broken. You need somebody to come in and try and change it,
fix the
so that
assembly line.
For the following coaches, it's actually a little bit easier. Going all the way back to Klinsmann was doing that, and the United States' biggest mistake was saying, "Well, we need results right now," when in reality they should have been like, "We need to trust this process because it's going to pay off in a few years." And you started seeing a little bit of that with the following managers with some of the players that we were getting. Mm-hmm. But they didn't give Klinsmann enough time because the U.S., with the ego, was like, we should be the best team in the world right now. Why aren't we doing that right now? When Klinsmann was saying, hey, you just need a little bit more time to eventually see what's actually happening at the youth levels, and they didn't allow it. So the only way, in my opinion, the only way that it's going to get better is if they realize that it needs a proper rebuild, similar to what Liverpool did with Klopp, where they said to Klopp, hey, you're taking over because we fully trust in the rebuild. We'll give you 5-6 years before we really see the fruits of all of this coming together, but we'll trust the process the whole way. Because Liverpool was not very good when Klopp took over. And even for the first couple of years, they weren't very good. But eventually, you saw what was going on. So until they change that before they even get the manager or get a manager who's going to say, hey, this is a 5 to 10 year plan, and they support it, shambles, mate. Just like Mexico needs a rebuild too. England doesn't. They just need a new manager.
Yeah, England pretty set.
All right, cool. Let's move on. So we're not gonna do the laws of the game. I wanted to bring that up, but that's something we could talk in a future podcast because that's not in a timely manner. I did want to give you guys a fun fact though. We'll end it with a fun fact if you guys are okay, because we're already almost 2 hours in.
2 hours into this thing. Damn. Sorry if we lost you.
So fun fact. All right. I saw this popped up on my Instagram, going back to the quality of the manager specifically in relation to Gareth Southgate. This is by Barney. I'm going to give credit. This is by Barney Ronay from the Guardian, via the Guardian. 11 elite Spanish club coaches had players in the two squads on the final, Spain versus England. English football was represented by 2, Sean Dyche and Eddie Howe. Neither of whom have won a major trophy. So when you look at all of the players in England and Spain, those teams, who their club coaches are, there was 11 elite Spanish club coaches. And English football only had 2. So the only English managers that coached players there were those 2 that I named. So that question, that begs the question, is there also a huge issue with the quality of coaches, of English coaches? I think about that means that Spain is doing something right with their coaching development. If you have that many.
I think it comes from the player development, because like to become a great coach, you don't need to be a great player, but you have to understand what it takes to be a great player. And maybe you don't have it from a physicality standpoint, but you understand it. That to me, it just screams how well at a young age Spain teaches the game to people, because they understand either spacing different, they understand where you need to be, positioning, tactics. There's, I think, a culmination of a lot of underlying things that eventually lead you to that spot of like, man, I wonder why all of these players are so good. And I think of like to me, one of the hardest positions is the 6. And if you look at some of the best 6s of all time, a good chunk of them are Spanish. Like the 3 that jump out to me: Busquets, Xabi Alonso, and now Rodri. And Xabi Alonso's proving he can be a great manager. And I would not be surprised if Busquets if he put his brain to management, would be great. And looking at Rodri, like watching him play, everything's easy to him. He just knows what's going to happen. So yeah, I think there's something there.
This is a crazy stat.
That is crazy.
Think about it. That's why Italian coaches are also really good. Italian coaches get a lot of respect. And maybe the Italian style is, not saying dying out, but it's not as effective right now because Italians are typically known for how well they defend.
Yeah.
But there is there's a really big Italian school, coaching school, that's really popular where a lot of the top Italian coaches have gone to. Spain, I think it's just the federation has it right in terms of player development. And if you have it right, it's not just player development, it's coaching development, really, because you get enough coaches under the same system, teaching the kids the same thing, the right thing, and you'll find success. Whereas England, I guess it's not paying off as much. United States don't even get me started in the United States coaching system right now. But I just thought that was an interesting fun fact.
That is very interesting.
I was just thinking of like, I'm trying to name English coaches that have stood out in the past like 10 years.
Eddie Howe's the only one who really jumps out to me.
Eddie Howe's and that's from his like, not even the Newcastle days, more of like Bournemouth, of like not having a lot of money, playing the style and like that looks nice and appeals to people from other countries as well. Not Sean Dyche playing long balls, not Sam Allardyce playing long balls, like the old school managers that are just like kick ball, kick ball, kick ball. Now in the Premier League, so what we have literally Eddie Howe. What, Sean Dyche in the Premier League? I don't know any other.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any others.
I'm sure the new Ipswich coach, I think McKenna or whatever, I think he's supposed to be like really good, but it's crazy. And like going back to Southgate, how did he get that job in the first place? Southgate relegated with Middlesbrough.
Yeah, but he found success, I think, with one of the youth national teams.
Is that what it was? Oh,
yeah, I think he was with the youth national teams and then he got moved up pretty quickly.
Fair.
But think about it. You relegated with the team. It's like Sam Allardyce. You relegate with the team. And they're like, I'll take like the U21s or whatever. And you, fair play if Southgate, maybe he won it. I have no idea. I don't remember. But if he won it and then you got that, just the fact that you relegated with somebody.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy. And back to Spanish managers, Fabregas with Como.
Yeah.
He was the caretaker for the second part of the season. Did amazing. Promoted to Serie A. Now they hired him like full time. Which is crazy. Yeah. And Fabregas is one of those people, which again, during the Euros, I think I mentioned to you because in the beginning of Euros when I was listening to Alexi Lalas, I was like, God, this is awful. And Sturridge was pissed off, and then Fabregas was one of the only people. He was on BBC, I think, that when they asked him a question, he went into like deep detail of like what a player feels like in the, like those defensive midfield positions of like what it takes and like what's a good player, what's a great player, the difference and all that. He broke it down so perfect, and everybody was just like, no English pundit has done anywhere near as much of breaking down of a position than this guy did in like 10 minutes in the past like 10 years, which is crazy because you can tell Fabregas is a player at all the time where he was a Barca, Arsenal, whatever, that he was a thinking player where you know that he's going to be just like Xabi Alonso. They just think when you're on the field, you know they're going to be a good manager if they put their head to it. Like back to your point about, Spanish people, Spanish players, midfielders. Now it's crazy. He's going to Serie A and building a really good team and like playing a good style of football. So it just, and I can't, like, we make fun of Alexi Lalas or even like some of the other guys, ex-pros, they're pundits. Then we go to England, we talk about Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville, shit takes. What did Gary Neville say about Cucurella? He's going to be the weakest. He's going to be the reason why Spain will not go far in the Euros.
He did play great.
One of the best players for Spain.
Yeah, put everyone in his pocket.
To be fair, though, Cucurella's controversial for a lot of people.
Well, he might be, but like...
So it wasn't like a crazy take when he said it. It was obviously just didn't pan out or whatever. But
now he's on memes everywhere.
But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. There's a problem with the coaching.
There's like the thinking.
You're thinking, yeah. So interesting fun fact. I thought
doesn't mean my tweets for tomorrow.
That just means that when I do my UEFA licenses, I'm going to Spain.
Let me go with you.
That's a good idea.
Go to Spain instead of going to England.
Are you actually allowed to do that?
Yeah, I can go. We just have to travel.
Yeah,
me and Joe are doing our UEFA licenses together.
It's gonna be great
under a Spanish federation.
I'm down.
All right, almost 2 hours, boys. I'm feeling good. I know there's some issues.
Did we record? Did it record?
Yeah, it's recording. Perfect. I mean, I hope it all worked out. But
I got an idea: break into 3 episodes, and so then when we do take the break.
Yeah, we have some more. No, listen, the first episode was one. I wanted to make sure that we successfully recorded. It's not going to be perfect, but get it out of the way, get back into the swing of things, start posting the shorts again on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, all of those. And remember, we're going to be at the game Friday. We're going to get content so we can post, get back into the swing of things because I think we got something good going. Joe made me feel really good earlier when he said that one of his friends told him, or some guy that he knew told him that our podcast has one of the most legitimate professional looking productions.
Great job, Javi.
It's all good until you hear a buzzing noise in the background because the microphone's cable wasn't connected fully or something. All right, that's pretty much it. You guys want to say anything? Georgie, nothing? You good? See everyone on Friday, Pittsburgh. All right, Joe, what do you got?
Thanks.
What are the stats? What do the stats say?
The stats are flatlined. Zero stats. But we'll have some stat updates for you.
We're trying to revive it. All right. And there's going to be a lot more podcast episodes coming up. Season's coming back. We got transfer rumors, good transfers. I'm not even going to... Arsenal doing well, right?
Fuck off. I might not appear on these. I might not.
We'll be back for the Premier League season, Champions League, and all that good stuff. All right. And Olympics are going on, so it's a couple of
they start tomorrow.
They start tomorrow. So
it's like 10 games tomorrow.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, for real?
That's it for this one, guys. We will catch you in the next one.
Messi to the near